Come in, dude.
Hey,
What's up?
this place. This is cool.
Alright, how's the ride?
Not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah, a little stormy on the way up.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, perfect. For a spooky podcast?
You right?
How about we get a storm that rolls through?
Can I just run to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah.
Where is that?
I'll show you. Upstairs. The one downside of this place. All right, we're back with another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast. This time I am joined by Ryan Gilman from Rhode Island Whitetails. He's been on the podcast before, but this is something a little bit different. This podcast, we actually don't talk about hunting at all, but it's I think it's going to be one of the more popular podcasts we've done, just because he's got a incredible story of an experience that happened to him last year. It's actually during hunting season, but he wasn't hunting, he was camping with his wife. And, you know, it's a supernatural, unexplainable occurrence. But there's some great audio that he shares on here from the event that captures the creature. I guess that's what we can call it. There's no other way to describe what this thing possibly is but a creature. So there's some good audio in there, and there's a lot of circumstantial evidence around that as well, that I'm just going to let him tell the story about it, but super intriguing, super interesting. I'm a believer in that stuff. I've had a lot of unexplainable things happen to me where the only explanation is that there is some other dimension or energy or something. I know not everybody's had experiences like that, so not everybody has as much of an open mind as I do around some of this stuff. And you know, some people might not even like this podcast, but I think a lot of you will. It's super interesting. Without wasting any more time, let's get into this one. Special supernatural edition of the Hunt Suburbia podcast. Here is Ryan Gilman. Okay, we are back with another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast. We've got a special edition. Well, I don't know what we're going to call it, but we're going to do a little spin-off series, I think, a little bit here and there. Because a lot of people, after I teased that I was going to have you in, Ryan, a lot of people were sending me all these crazy encounters they've had in the woods, either while hunting or just because we're hunters, we happen to be in places that a lot of people don't go.
Yep.
So I think there's so many people with crazy experiences out there, but your experience, dude, and I've only heard a little bit of it, so we want to talk about it, you know, in more detail on this podcast, was awesome. I've grown up and had crazy experiences too, and how I know that when someone's telling me something and the true giveaway that's like, oh, this person's being honest. First of all, I trust you. You're like a super honest, like awesome dude. I can already tell. From, you know, we've known each other now for over a year. But if somebody gets goosebumps when they tell their story and then you get goosebumps from it, it's like you're passing off the goosebumps. You know it's freaking truthful, dude.
Yep.
So yeah, we've got Ryan Gilman on from Rhode Island Whitetails. Had you on before, and Dan talking about deer hunting and all that stuff. And we might get into some deer hunting in this one a little bit, but we do want to talk about this awesome story of what you encountered. So is there anything you want to say to like set it up before we kind of get into
Yeah, I definitely do want to kind of like preface it just a little bit before we just jump right into the story. You know, I just kind of want to ask like just a broad question to like maybe all your listeners and you in general. Like, does anyone get freaked out when they're walking through the deep woods, like to their morning stand, or like coming out at night, like coming out in the dark or going in super far? Like you got an hour walk in the dark. Like, does anybody get freaked out of like what's out there, or like anything watching you, or anything above you watching you? It could be anything. Does anyone get freaked out? Do you get freaked out?
I'm sure people do. I don't get freaked out anymore. When I was a little kid, I did. And I don't know. I don't. I talked about it recently on the podcast. You know, with new hunters, like for specifically new hunters who just get into hunting in their adulthood, and they're not used to going in the morning, and that's not, they haven't gotten over that. That's like the biggest fear for a lot of new hunters is like, wait a minute. If I'm going to be way back in the woods and I want to be there, a half hour before sunrise, then you've got this long trek through the woods. So it's a big thing for people to overcome who just get into it. But also, I mean, people have been doing it their whole lives. There is something eerie about it, right?
Yeah,
but
it could come second nature to you once you do it. If you're a hunter, a lifelong hunter, it kind of just you don't even think about that kind of stuff. And you shouldn't as you're walking through the woods in the dark. But
yeah. And I was a lifelong hunter with my it was always long walks to get into our spot. And, I was with my dad when I was 9, going a mile and a half into the woods. So I don't know. I remember feeling pretty scared. I was looking, because especially if you're the last person in line, if you're walking in with a group of people and like you're the last one in the morning, that was always kind of freaky. It's like, what's behind me?
Right.
But.
So I gotta say, another kind of preface to the whole story is, have you ever seen the documentary? It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Missing 411.
No.
It's about it's specifically hunter related. All these hunters that have just gone missing over the years, like throughout 10, 20 years. It's literally only about hunters who go missing.
And it's on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. Super good documentary. It's all true. And I watched it one time with my wife, and that's just something that freaked me out. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be super honest in this podcast. Like, that freaked me out. Like, it literally, people just vanish. They don't find their guns. Why would your gun disappear? If you're going to get eaten by a bear or whatever, mountain lion, that stuff would be left behind. But this stuff they're just gone.
The hardware's gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, nothing, your gun can't just like disintegrate. So it's a super cool documentary, and you should look into it, and everyone should if they haven't watched it. But it's definitely really interesting.
I should have watched that before you came today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. I think there's a Missing 411 Reddit page that I've come across before. That has a bunch of stories of people gone missing all over the country and the world, really. But yeah, that's super interesting. So, like, what's one of the cases in there? And that
one of the stories that stood out was I'm pretty sure it was either Maine or Vermont, one of the two. So a group of older guys who always got together, like a hunting camp, like everyone does. One guy was in his 70s. His sons were with him, and they're on this mountainside and on a logging road. And everyone put the older guys. There's 5 older guys and like five of their sons, let's say. And they dropped all the old guys, their dads, on the logging road. And they said they were 75 yards apart. And they told them, walk in the woods in a straight line and set up. So these guys were set up 75 yards apart in a single line on a road. So you can't get lost. You're just going straight from the road 75 yards and stand up beside a tree, and these guys are going to do a big push to them. Well, one of the guys just vanished. Like, it's just unexplainable. Like
in a deer drive.
In a deer drive. So these guys were just pushing a huge mountainside, and they're coming down to their dads. When they got to the road, everyone met back at the road except for one guy. He was just gone. They searched for him for a month. Didn't find his gun, like I said. Didn't find anything. No clothing, boots, absolutely nothing. Just vanished. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And when I teased this, and I probably had 10 guys send me interesting encounters that they've had, and a lot of them. Another thing that I really want to look into is, have you heard of Hockomock Swamp before? I think that's we were up at Total Archery Challenge, and you told me about this.
Yep.
That was the swamp I was trying to pull up the name to tell you. It's like the most haunted. It was a Native American, retreat when they were fighting wars against, the white man, the Europeans. I forget which exact war, right? But that would be their stronghold. They could always retreat to the middle of that swamp. It's like the biggest swamp in Massachusetts, and they would retreat into there because the Europeans didn't want to go into those thick, nasty swamps. They didn't know how to navigate in there. But it's also in the middle of what's called the Bridgewater Triangle, which had so many different supernatural occurrences. It's just a hot spot, a hotbed for that. And it just happened to also be a huge Native American stronghold, but people see, all kinds of stuff. I forget what this thing is called, like a puckwudgie or something, is this little creature that they see. Okay. that there's been a bunch of sightings in there of. There's been UFO sightings. There's little floating orbs that people see all the time, spirits of Native Americans, and a lot of people go into that swamp and never come out too. Like people go missing in there.
They just get
and
swallowed up.
It's huge, and there's some big bucks in there I hear too. Like, so I've always kind of wanted to maybe tackle that swamp from both a hunting side and the paranormal thing. This has always been something I've been super interested in. I believe in there's things that are just unexplainable out there. Maybe in a future podcast, like I'll talk about, I've had some really spiritual, crazy things happen that are just completely, there's no way to explain it other than there's another energy that was around in the room that could see and hear and think and feel what I was feeling without, there was just no other explanation. I'm going to save that for a different podcast, but it was without a doubt, just tells me, dude, there's either other dimensions or other worlds and crossover energies that is just not that we can see or feel on a continual basis, but it's there. And I don't know.
Sometimes you just get that weird feeling, right? You just can't explain it. And I guess you never will be able to, but you just get that eerie feeling. Like you said, like my story gave you goosebumps. Like, you can imagine what I felt when I was going through this. It was more than goosebumps.
Yeah, well, let's. I think we've done enough teasing for now. Let's just start talking about it, and we don't have to go super fast through it. But how did this start? You and your wife decide to go camping.
Yeah, so last fall, I just had a baby. So my wife was pregnant. We wanted to do like one last camping trip before the baby came. My baby was due in March. So we just kind of wanted to do like one last hurrah, one last camping trip before, everything happened, and one last family trip. It was me, my wife, and my dog. We love camping. We usually do one trip a year. We try to, at least. Up in the Northeast, where we usually go up to Vermont. Actually, Tunbridge, Vermont is a favorite spot of ours. Small town.
Yep.
But we've been there for a few years, and let's try Maine, and I have a camp in Maine, but we like tent camping. We like kind of getting out there and going to the backwoods and doing our own thing and getting away from people. We've done KOA campgrounds and campgrounds of all different kinds before, and just not a fan. You're on top of people and you got to buy the firewood, and you know how it is.
Yeah.
But, so
you want the real experience,
Yeah, so
This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter. This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter. This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter.
And just go camp on my property. So that's what it was. We found this really good place, coastal Maine, and we're like, let's give it a shot. So that's what we did. And it was Columbus Day weekend of 2022. So Columbus Day weekend was October 7th, 8th, 9th. I think 10th was Columbus Day, the Monday, but that's when it was. And there are a few key details to the story that we should probably go over. So that weekend, Columbus Day weekend, was the first full moon in October. That's an important detail that we can get to later, but that was one of the first weekends. It was going to get really, really cold. It was going to get down to below 32 degrees, freezing temperatures. So we made sure we packed for it, good sleeping bags and stuff like that. So we packed up the 4Runner and headed on up there.
So were you guys going for the whole weekend? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah, we left on Friday afternoon, and we're going to camp Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, come home Monday.
Yep.
And another funny detail, just as we're going through the story here, my buddy Andy and his father drew a Maine moose lottery permit last year, and they were headed up to Maine at the same time we were, and he was about 20 minutes behind us, and we ended up passing him on the Maine Turnpike, and they were like waving out the window, and he was actually I think he was the only guy from Rhode Island to draw a moose tag from last year, so it was awesome. He got a bull too. He was awesome. He's been on the waiting list for 50 years.
Whoa.
He finally got it.
Wow.
So I'm happy for him.
So a good weekend for some, and then a weird weekend for others.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we didn't know how weird it was gonna get when we
Yeah.
were driving up there, but
So you rent the place. Do you get any messages from the owner? Hey, or do they live on the property? Do they live anywhere around there? Go through that.
yeah, we actually weren't sure if they lived on the property. We just kind of got the address and said, you're on your own. We weren't really sure if they did live on the property, but when we were driving in, it was a long dirt road, and there was one house on the road that was leading us down to the campsite, and we actually did think that was the landowner, but they didn't say come check in with us or anything like that. They just gave us like pretty much like a pin.
I was gonna say, do they tell you where to go? Like,
Yeah, they just give us like just janky directions and tell us where to go, and we found our way. So it was pretty easy to get to. But
And what's set up down there? Can you kind of describe in detail what the scene is like where you end up camping?
yeah, it was main roads obviously all the way there. Get off the highway, drive another hour to where we were going. But it was a pretty long dirt road to get down there, and it was actually pretty eerie. On that dirt road, we're probably like 10 minutes away, and I actually did point out to my wife, I'm like, hey, look at that creepy cemetery in there. Like, we definitely got to go like check that out. My wife, typical girl, like, no, I'm not doing that. But that it actually did happen. I'm like, look at that creepy cemetery, and we're only like probably like a mile away, not even from where our campsite is. The directions said there's a chain link fence, across two posts at where the driveway is. So just like unhook it and drive down. You're here. So we did. We unhooked the chain, and it was like a really narrow, windy little driveway downhill. It was literally Christmas trees on both sides, like thick pines. I was probably scratching up my wife's 4Runner as we were going down, but it was like a windy driveway going downhill. This really long Christmas trees, pine trees, really thick. You like couldn't even walk through it. That's how thick it was, like both sides. And then it just opened up to like a beautiful campsite. It was actually, they have a porta-john down there for us. Not even an outhouse, like an actual porta-john, which was really nice. A platform where we could put our tent, and just a nice like a picnic table, and that's pretty much it. So they didn't let us sleep on the ground. They actually had like a couple like pallets that were nailed together so we could like put our tent on there, and a nice fire pit, and a picnic table for us. So and we were about 75 yards away from the ocean. So we were like in a big cove on the water. So it was really beautiful.
So, are you on the beach? The actual campground, is it on sand? Is it on the beach? Are you in the woods a little bit? You can see the beach?
Yeah, we were probably 75 yards off the water, and it wasn't like a typical beach. Like, I'm from Rhode Island, I'm like used to nice sandy beaches and stuff, but Maine's all rocky and stuff like that. So the beach is actually just like all like cobblestone and rocks and stuff like that, but it's really beautiful and long. And I've been camping in Maine a few times, like along the coast, and I just literally can't believe how much the tide actually drops in Maine. I'm not used to that being from Rhode Island. Like the tide actually drops like 50 feet when it's low tide compared to when it's high tide. It just comes up so much, and it just always like astonishes me like how awesome that is.
Yeah. All right, so you guys are about 75 yards off of the water line.
Yep,
right?
and you can see the water from through the trees and stuff. It's just all pine trees and stuff like that. And they actually didn't provide any firewood. So that first night when we got there, it was probably just about getting dark. So I was like going through the woods.
But they say you can go get whatever you want.
Yeah, bring whatever you want. You can have a fire, like pretty much like free game to do anything you want.
Now, is there anything around you? Are there houses or structures or anything, or are you in big woods, or what's around?
It was pretty big woods, but there were a few houses around. I'd say the closest house was probably a half a mile away, but you could like see lights on the coast, like from where our campsite is, but like nothing close. Like you wouldn't be able to hear.
Yeah, half a mile away is a pretty long,
good
ways away.
Yeah. So
especially us being around the suburbs,
Exactly. Yeah, it was pretty decent far. Like we were pretty secluded. It was an awesome spot. So yeah, that first night when I got there, I was just like going through the woods, like getting like dead sticks and brush and logs and just trying to make a fire and do my thing. So it was great.
You didn't see any weird symbols hanging from the trees or anything?
No, that stuff like wasn't even on my mind. This was the first night we were there. We were there to do some hiking and kind of just like some relaxation and stuff like that. So
all right. So what time did you get there on Friday?
I think we got there around 7 at night.
Okay.
Yeah, 7 at night, because I probably left Rhode Island around
So was
like
it
2 or 3.
was it dark already or getting?
It was like just about there. I can't remember when the clocks change, but it's like right around that time, like when you're usually trying to like hunt and the clocks change, and then you get like screwed over from being able to hunt after work or not. You know?
Exactly. I'm relating it back to the first deer I got last year. It was like October 7th or 8th. It was right around that. And it was that first week that Mass opens up, and I know it gets dark around 7:30 or something like that. All right, so you go get firewood. You guys start a fire outside. Enjoyable evening.
Yeah, I think we just cook some burgers, like typical campsite stuff. Cook burgers, marshmallows, chips, like just stuff that we brought, and that was that.
Yep.
So the story that we're getting into actually didn't happen on Friday night. So we went to bed. Everything was great. Woke up on Saturday. Bounced around, did some hiking. Took my dog swimming, did all that sort of stuff, and we're actually exhausted from our full day of activities. So we went back to the campsite pretty early that afternoon. This was Saturday. And we had like an early dinner. I was actually really nervous about how cold it was going to be that night. It was supposed to get down to like below 30, like right around 30 degrees. So wow, we were actually kind of nervous about that, like more so for the dog. Weren't sure how she was going to be in the tent. But yeah, we were just kind of like in preparation for like the cold night ahead. Like had an early dinner, and I don't know, there's really not much to do.
What kind of tent do you have? It's not like an outfitter's tent where you can have a stove in there or anything.
No,
right?
Nothing like that. It's just like a regular like Walmart pop-up tent. Sleeps 3 people generously,
Yeah. So your heat was just going to be body heat and sleeping bags.
Yeah, we have pretty good sleeping bags. I don't cheap out on that stuff. Like I have a pretty good rated sleeping bag, probably for like negative 10 or something degrees. Pretty good sleeping bag. So does she. And then we just bundled the dog up and hope for the best. So, well, you want to just get right into it? Yeah.
But so this is this really kind of the first real cold night of the whole year, though? Would you say?
Absolutely.
Like the coldest first.
This
snap?
was like the first frost. I guess you'd say that. That was a
All
good
right.
description of it. It's like this is probably the first frost of the year. First full moon in October. First cold snap, really. So.
Okay. So you go to bed.
So we go to bed, and it was probably right around 2 a.m. I woke up, just probably from like nothing, I'm just pop my eyes open, and I heard something outside. And like I said, we were probably 75 yards from the ocean, and I consider myself an outdoorsman. I've been hunting my whole life, and I know what I can hear. As a hunter, you're constantly just like basing stuff off of what you hear. So just laying there, and no word of a lie, whatever I was hearing sounded as big as a moose. All right, it was a big animal, and it was walking in the water, but it wasn't walking with 4 legs like it was splash. Like it sounded like it was walking with 2 legs, like wading in the water. Splash, splash, splash. What the heck is this? I'm just sitting there listening, like starting to freak me out. All of a sudden it started making these noises, and these noises aren't something that I've ever heard in my entire life. Not from any movie, show, YouTube video, Discovery Channel. These noises freaked me out, man. And I was just sitting there listening, like, what is that? Like just trying to decipher what it was. So I got really freaked out, and I decided that it was the best idea to wake up my wife and just listen to this, So I'm like waking her up, like, Mackenzie, wake up. And she like wakes up. I'm trying not to freak her out, I'm like, can you just listen to what I hear right now? Like, what is that? Typical. I'm just trying not to scare her, but it was inevitable. She's like, what is that? I'm like, just listen. So we're sitting there listening, and both of us are pretty scared at this point. So
What about your dog? What was he?
She actually, thankfully, was just sleeping. Like, she wasn't barking. She is a notorious barker. She barks at everything. She was just laying there. She probably was just asleep because we were whispering. Thankfully, she wasn't barking. But both of us were sitting there listening to it, and both of us were pretty terrified. And I got so scared at this point that I legitimately was like, we need to get in the car. I didn't feel safe like in my tent at that point. You can't see anything. You're like feel like you're not really safe in like a cheesy, tent walls or anything. I'm like, I want to get in the car because at least it's like hard four walls. You can lock the doors and drive away if you need to. So I'm like,
and you had a gun in there too, right?
I did, yeah, it's good. So I always camp with my shotgun, and more so just from like crazy people, not like animals or anything. I'm not really worried about that, but more so like just crazy people. You never know what's gonna happen. But I was camping. My 12 gauge was next to me. I put a shell in, and I'm like, we need to get in the car. So we get out of the tent, get all the sleeping bags and stuff. We throw them in the car, and just like a horror movie, I told my wife, I'm like, you need to wait here. And I'm going to go check this and see what it is, because my curiosity at this point is like peaking. But although I'm like wicked scared, I'm like, I need to know what this is. Like, I can't just leave and not at least put eyes on it.
How long was it from when you first woke up and started hearing the sounds before you guys left to get to your car?
We were probably in the tent listening for about 5 minutes.
Really?
And, it's a long 5 minutes.
And was it sloshing around in the water the entire time?
Yep, walking around in the water.
Back, did it sound like it was going back and forth or towards you or away from you or anything? Do you recollect any of that?
It was probably just like slowly walking, like right out in front. It wasn't like moving. It wasn't running or anything like that. It was just like wading around, walking, making these crazy noises.
Vocalization noises, right?
Yes. Yeah. Like growling and like I can't really, and I have the audio, so
when we get to that part of the story, well, yeah.
So we get in the car. I told my wife, I'm like, please wait here for a second. I'm gonna go check it out and see what this thing is. And, no, don't go, don't leave me. Like just literally typical horror movie stuff. Like, I'm gonna go check out what this thing is. Like, you wait here. I'll be right back.
What were you guys whispering to each other first before that? Where like in the tent, where you'd like, I don't know what that is. Like it could be this and that. Was she like, oh, it's a bear? Like, what was some... Do you remember any of that conversation?
No, because the noises weren't anything that were recognizable. Like, if it was a bear or something, at least you would know what it is. And, like, yeah, maybe you'd get in the car because you're worried about it coming up to the tent, smelling food or whatever it is.
But does your wife know as much about the outdoors and stuff as you do?
Not as much, but she could still recognize recognizable sounds about a bear.
Okay, so there was none of that stuff where
none
she's
of that
like,
stuff. We were like,
oh, it's a bear, we gotta go. Like you guys were just confused.
Just confused about what we were hearing. We had no idea what it was, and that's what the scary part was. We like could not decipher what the noise was, and it was so terrifying that we were like literally had to get in the car to feel safer.
Yep.
So she waits in the car, pleading with me not to go. I got my stream light, got my gun, and I'm off. And there's a little trail that goes down to the water, and that's where the noise was coming from. So got my light, going down there, listening. And right at the end of the path, it drops down to the beach. So there's like a set of like 6 or 7 stairs, like a wooden staircase that goes down to the beach, and that's as far as I made it. I could see the water at that point, but I wasn't going down those stairs, so I made it to that point. You can see the whole beach I didn't have to go down there. So
that point's past your tent, or your tent is still between you and the...
No, it's past my tent. Like, we're camping up 75 yards from the water. Like, I like walked forward like towards the ocean, and like made it to this little staircase.
Yep.
So, like I said, it was really cold that night, so the water was probably warmer than the air still, and it was just like dense fog. And I'm shining my stream light, and you know how it is when you're trying to shine like in through fog with a stream light, you can't really see anything.
It's crazy that it was foggy.
Yeah, I know. It literally is like picture perfect horror story. So I'm shining my light, trying to like figure out where it was coming from. And now, since I'm down like kind of close proximity of whatever this thing is, it stopped making the noises, obviously, because why would it? It sees me, I can't see it, so it stops making noises. So I'm shining my light, it stopped making noises. Like, now I'm like, where is this thing? And at that point, I heard something run. And whatever was making the noise, like I said, was in the water. Whatever ran down the beach. And like I said before, I know what an animal sounds like when it runs. Like when a deer runs or a dog runs, it sounds like, the distinguishable 4 legs.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever ran on 2 legs, I'm telling you. This is a true story. It ran on 2 legs. So that scared me even more because it sounded like a human.
Well, at that point, that was the first real time where it's like, whoa, this is 100% a 2-legged thing.
Correct.
It registered for you.
Correct. That's exactly it. It's a good way to put it. That registered, it clicked in my mind.
something is even
This
weirder
is on
now.
2 legs. This thing ran, and what the heck is this? So I got out of there. I ran back up to the car. And I'm like, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in the car? We can't. It's 2 a.m. It doesn't get light until 6. She's like, I want to leave. I'm like, all right. I was right there with her. Like, I'm not going to lie. I'm like, I'll leave right now. I don't care. So we got in the car. We like kind of just like got a few things like pillows and stuff so we could sleep somewhere else. Loaded up the car and got out of there. And I went to like the closest Walmart, because I know you can like, camp or sleep in your car in a Walmart parking lot, like no problem. And that was like probably the closest one was probably like
This audio has been edited out.
we drove to the closest Walmart, and we slept, or we tried to sleep until sunrise so we could go back, because I wasn't going back in the dark.
So, when you heard him running down the beach, though, and it's not a sandy beach, right? It's gravelly and rocky.
Yeah, it's like gravelly and rocky. Yeah. So
you can really hear each.
yeah, like human sounds like.
Yeah.
Like kind of like that.
And super heavy.
Yeah. And I think the noises scared me more than the running, but the running, like you said, that's what triggered like this is scary. Like this isn't an animal.
So when you recorded the sounds, though, that was before you had approached down to the beach?
No,
Or
actually,
when was that?
I probably shouldn't have left that out. Right before we left to go to Walmart, before we left the campsite.
Yeah, after it ran away from you, you went back to your truck.
Yeah, absolutely. After it ran away, I ran back to the truck, and right before we were leaving, I was like, I need to record this, because right when I got back to the car, the noises started again. I'm like, what the heck? I was just down there, and it was silent. Now I'm back at the car, and it's going again? Like, whatever ran, now it's back. And it was almost like it was 2 different things. Whatever ran was almost like different from what was making the noises. Like there was 2 of them. One was in the water, one was on the beach, and it ran. So I'm luckily I had the smarts to like, I'm going to record this audio so that at least people believe me what I heard. And it's not just a story at this point. I have some like evidence of like what was happening. So I recorded audio. I think I recorded on my GoPro, and I just like put the GoPro on, like clamped it to like the picnic table that was right there. And I'm like, my wife was like, let's go. I'm like, just shh. I want to record the audio before we leave,
Yeah.
So things started going again. Got like pretty good audio, like a minute long of these noises. And I finally, at the end of the video, you can hear my wife like, let's go now. It's hilarious.
Let's play the audio, and
All right.
You'll send me the better file and I'll pipe it in, but we'll play it from the, I know it doesn't start till like 15 seconds in, but play it from the start so I can line it up perfect.
Sure. So I'll play it from the start, and right at the beginning you can hear like the car door close, because I'm telling my wife like, close the door, like I want to like get good audio. So like that's the first thing you hear, and then about 15 seconds in, the noises start.
Wow, dude.
The best part about that video is the very first thing, because it makes that at the end like that. I don't even know how to explain it, like that graspy, like.
And
like
that was
like
far away from you too, and it sounded like it could have been right up on you, but
yeah, it was loud, and it's just weird, man. And let me just, I know this sounds crazy. This is like definitely a different type of podcast and a different type of story. But before you go saying that, oh man, that's a bobcat or that's a lynx, or mountain lion maybe. There's not many around, but they are around, especially in this part of the country. Even people don't think they are. But before you go saying that's a cat, because it does, people's minds go, that's a cat.
Yeah.
That's a bobcat for sure. I can debunk you because it sounded as big as a moose. Bobcat's tiny, lynx tiny. And
They're not going to be making, especially running down the beach.
why was it in the water? Right? Cats don't like water. Why would it be hunting anything in the water? Sure, fish, but this is October in Maine. There shouldn't be really fish around. I don't know. I'm gonna debunk your cat theory because it sounded huge, and it was in the water. Cats don't
And
like
two
water.
legs.
And 2 legs. That's another thing.
But the thing to me, which might even be the craziest part of the story, is what happens after all this. That you don't need to even debunk. Like, once people listen to the whole thing and the rest of this, it's like, all right, now there's new things that you have to start thinking about. So what happens when you guys wake up in Walmart, and what's the rest of that story look like?
Yep, so we're in Walmart parking lot probably for 4 hours trying to sleep. Can't, because our minds are going crazy. We're talking about it. We're trying to text our friends, the audio and stuff. I think it probably got half an hour of sleep after settling down, in the driver's seat with the seat kicked back. But anyway, we waited for sunrise because we wanted to go back and just try and see if we could see tracks or anything down by the water. And we get back probably 6:30 in the morning, 7 in the morning. We immediately go down to the beach. I couldn't find any sort of tracks. Even what I heard running away, couldn't find any sort of tracks, human tracks, animal tracks, whatever it might be. I literally can't find anything. So that was just weird. And the rest of Saturday, we kind of just had a normal day. We actually packed up all of our stuff, not knowing we had another night. We had Sunday night to spend there. But we're like, let's just pack up the car. My wife started Googling hotel rooms or any sort of campground that we could go to that's not that one, because there's no way that I could convince her let's stay another night.
Yeah.
Even I didn't want to. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So we spent the rest of the day kind of just trying to make the best of it, hiking still, doing stuff we wanted to do. And when it came time to find a spot to stay, to be honest, I really don't want to spend another $150, whatever, on a hotel room. I was like, let's just go home. So we just completely canceled out our last night, didn't get refunded for it, and just went home because there's nothing. I was like, I'm not gonna find another place to stay. I just want to go home at this point. We'll spend our Monday, our Columbus Day, chilling at home. So.
But at some point, you sent a message to...
Yeah, so...
This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter. This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter. This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter. This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter. This audio has been edited out to protect the whereabouts of the encounter.
We heard some things that were very unexplainable. I'm an outdoorsman. I've been in the woods my whole life. I literally cannot explain what I heard. It was a full moon that night. Gave her kind of just the short story about what happened. And a couple days went by, and she emailed me back, and she was like, is this real? Are you serious? You need to call me right now. I need to tell you something.
No. No.
What do you do when the property owner says, call me, I need to tell you something? Basically I need to explain.
Yeah.
I was like, are you like, what is she about to tell me? Like, I couldn't call her fast enough. So I'm like, Sass, send me your, first I told her I recorded the audio, and she's like, how can you send me this audio? You know, I'm like, let me, like, give me your Instagram name, you know? So we like follow each other on Instagram, and I sent her the video clip through Instagram. And she that's when she said, oh my God, call me. I need to explain, like, you know, so like, holy crap, what is she about to tell
like,
me?
what is she going to say, dude?
Right. So I get on the phone with this lady, really, really nice lady. She tells me that she's from New York. She never goes there. This is property that she owns. It's like an investment property. She lets the people camp there and make money on it. But I think she bought the property 3 years ago. She gave me the whole spiel. She's like, 3 years ago when we bought that property, the closest neighbors, you know, knew the sale was happening, and they contacted us and said, listen, before you buy this property, you need to come over, specifically on full moon nights.
No.
Yep. Only on full moons this stuff happens. She goes, the neighbor said, come over on a full moon night before you buy this property and listen and basically like experience what happens. No. She's like, what? Her and her husband are like, what are you talking about, you know? And I'm like freaking out. God. I'm like freaking out while I'm talking to her. She's like, so these people go over the neighbors on a full moon night, you know, have drinks or whatever, they're sitting outside. And literally, no word of a lie, she's like, this is true. She's like, on full moon nights, you sit outside and you listen. She's like, we heard Indian drumming and Indian music coming from the middle of the woods, weird stuff like that happening. And this only happens on full moon nights, and that's the weekend that we were there. So like, all of a sudden this turned, like, you know, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, now it's turned into like Indian. You mentioned skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, for what you don't know, for anybody who doesn't know what a skinwalker is basically like an evil spirit through like the Indian cultures, right?
That can, I believe it's that can morph into
correct
animal,
correct
into like different animal beings, and you know, morph into that physical
right.
manifestation of an animal.
Correct. Yeah,
which,
you're right.
Holy crap, dude.
Exactly. So like that made me freak out when she told me
that. I mean, that's insane. When that lines up, that for me, when you were telling me the story the first time, it's like that's what ties this whole story together, that makes it so much more intriguing.
I know.
Is that whole part of it there.
Right.
Because now, again, anyone who thinks that it could have been a bobcat, sure, it even sounds like, to me, like I've heard bobcats on YouTube sound like that. I had a cat that was partially wild for years, and when it would get angry, it would have a deep growl like that. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it was heavy, the fact that it ran away and sounded bipedal, and the fact that the landowner brought that into it, and then the neighbors have been experiencing it for years, like the Indian drumming and sounds and chants and all of that. Then you start thinking about what a skinwalker is, and the fact that it's a Native American spirit that can manifest itself as an animal. You're like, now we're starting to like, it is crazy as it sounds. I like to believe in that kind of stuff.
Oh, I'm 100% believer in it now.
I like to be skeptic too as well, because sometimes when I'm a skeptic, it turns me into like an even bigger believer. If you're a skeptic and then you go and you experience it too, it's like, holy crap, it's insane. So, but that ties it all together. And isn't there something to do with the Native American burial ground near there too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's like, oh, and by the way, like, just like cherry on top, like, you're camping on that whole place is Indian burial grounds, like from back in the 1800s.
By the way, dude.
By the way, we like didn't disclose this in like your you know, the website, you know. Sorry.
The neighbor knew that, right?
The neighbors knew that. Yeah, the whole place is an Indian preserve. We were camping on Indian burial grounds. Like, no word of a lie. It's like, how much crazier can it get?
Dude.
So like, and you know, back from the beginning of the story when I started, like, oh look, Ken's, there's an old cemetery. Like, let's like really run down old cemetery. Let's go check that out. You know.
Wow. So, how was your call with the landowner? Like, did they only experience it once? Like when she went up there and she was there on the full moon, you know, meeting the neighbor, she experienced it one time and that was it, or?
I think she only experienced it that one time, and I think they don't really live in the area.
Yeah.
They probably go there once a year, and how often are you gonna go there on a full moon anyway? It's kind of just like a random occurrence.
Yeah.
She did have some other interesting stories though. Like she's a full believer in like the supernatural and stuff. Just quickly, I was on the phone with her for like a half an hour, and she was telling me all this other weird stuff that's happened to her, like her and her husband. It's not in the same spot, but other places.
But since they bought the property.
Yeah, exactly. These spirits are following them. Her and her husband were camping in like a log cabin somewhere, and I forget everything, but I remember she said they went to sleep. The wood stove was going inside, and when they woke up, or the wife got up first, make some coffee, and noticed that all the wood in the cabin was like completely like restocked, like completely like stacked up perfectly, like as it was when they first got there.
Huh.
And her husband woke up and she's like, "Oh, like thank you so much for like replenishing the wood last night. It's so nice of you." He's like, "I didn't do that." And
No
she
way.
was like, "What?" Like it's like they didn't even burn a log that night, and like they were burning the wood stove all night. And she's like, "What?"
That's crazy because that's one of the experiences when I was a little kid. I grew up in this real old house in Vermont, and one of the things that my brother and I shared a room. When we were real young, we shared a room for like 4 or 5 years. But I think I was 6 or 7, and my brother was 5. And our room, typical kids, toys everywhere, super messy. We go to bed. We're on bunk beds. I remember waking up in the middle of the night and seeing like my mom in a nightgown just like cleaning up the room, but I could only see her from behind. She was facing away, but cleaning up the room. And I remember not thinking anything of it really, and then going back to sleep. And in the morning, the room was completely clean. And at breakfast, same thing. I was like, "Well, thanks for cleaning up the room last night, Mom. That was nice, And she was like, "What are you talking about? I did not clean up your room." So
Weird.
that was like very similar.
Sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's things that you can't explain.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird. Like, what are you waking up in the middle of the night, like sleepwalking, cleaning?
Yeah. Or she was. Yeah, I don't know.
Weird.
It was. Wow. So now, what is you obviously want to go back to this place, right?
Yeah, I definitely want to go back, but I want to go with like a group of guys, like
Yeah.
a group
I'm
of
in,
guy
dude.
friends. Yeah, let's go. I'm trying to get a group of guys together and go on a full moon night, maybe even like the same full moon.
Right.
So me and Pat were actually looking at the full moons, this past year, and that first full moon in October, the one that we had that night, October 8th, 9th, was called the Hunter's Moon, and the Hunter's Moon is named the Hunter's Moon because it triggered the Native Americans back in the day to get ready for the winter months ahead. So they wanted to like hunt for their meat and start gathering meat and food and all that stuff. That's why it's called a Hunter's Moon. So like it's just the weird pieces to the puzzle that are just all lined up for this. It's just really crazy.
Wow. That does make it crazy too.
So yeah, now I follow this lady on Instagram. We're kind of friends, and it's kind of funny. So I'm definitely going back. I think if I just had like one more friend there that night, rather than just like being me and my wife, she was pregnant. I didn't know what I didn't want to put her in danger or anything. Like, not that I thought that we were in danger, but I was legitimately terrified of that noise.
Yeah.
But if I just had like one friend or any other male there that was willing to just like, let's like investigate more, like it would have been like cool to be, but since it was just me and just trying to like protect my wife, and it's just like, no, let's get out of here.
What's really weird to me is that the dog didn't act up at all.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd think that they would, because they sense stuff more than us at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was maybe it's because of the middle of the night, and she's a deep sleeper anyways, a big lazy golden doodle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really surprised that she didn't bark at all. Even when she was in the car, she wasn't barking. And normally if I'm like outside of the car and she's locked in, she's barking her head off, like, let me out.
Yeah, especially hearing sounds too.
Yeah.
Any other animal sounds like that.
It's really weird.
Like maybe she was frozen in some kind of a fear or mental state or something.
Yep.
Who knows? But yeah, dude, I'm down to go back. We should definitely like bring good camera, something with night vision.
Yeah,
some
good audio equipment.
Yeah.
Have you ever like seen those audio, like it looks like a big like almost like a cone that a dog would wear at like after the vet, like like it just like spreads out real wide, like you can get like Like the stuff that those guys are on the sidelines at the NFL, like they're holding up these big like wide audio recorders.
Yeah.
Like I want to like get one of those that just captures like everything, you know.
Yeah, Pat Burns probably knows about that stuff. He probably has one. And we know a bunch of the audio guys that come to hunt stock and stuff. Like we could get some really good equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun, and I would like to talk to that neighbor too.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, get their input and hear their.
They've
story.
obviously been living there for a while, and then they probably have a bunch of experiences.
Yep.
You should try to like get their number and just call them and see what try to get in touch with them too, and ask them dig a little bit more into it.
Yeah.
That would be.
I had full intentions of like making like a pretty good YouTube video about this because the morning after when we came back, I like started recording everything. So I have like video recording of us like driving down the driveway. Like I said, like pine trees on both sides, like really creepy driveway. I had videos of myself like walking down the path like to the beach, like just like I was that night, like doing everything like backwards, like trying to like capture everything so I could just like make a whole story about that. And maybe when you release the podcast, I'll just put together like an Instagram post of like those clips just so people can get a visual of like the actual campsite and what I was doing and like what it looks like, pairing it with the story. So people can get like a good idea of like what actually like could see what I saw,
Yep. Yeah. Remind people of your Instagram.
Yeah, my Instagram's called Rhode Island _whitetails. So yeah, check me out there. I'll post it there when this podcast comes out.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we'll probably want to kind of try to be smart and maybe edit out any of the stuff that might help identify where this is.
No, I'm pretty confident that my video clips really don't have anything in the background or anything that people would be able to like pinpoint where it was, because everyone these days are trying to find out what's in the background. Is that a mailbox number or whatever? So
whether it's big bucks or your supernatural ghost hunting, dude.
Big bucks, yeah. So yeah, no, I'm pretty confident that it doesn't have anything. So I'll double check, make sure I'm not posting anything or people can find out, because nobody's gonna beat me back to this campsite to find out what this was. Like I want to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should try and plan a trip. That would be super fun.
I wonder if there is we could try like a summertime full moon if we could too, because you're starting to get into hunting season, October, the hunter's moon, dude.
Yeah, exactly. I was like almost like didn't want to go on that trip. I'm like, October, come on, we're not going camping in October, like it's bow hunting season. But yeah, it was cool.
Yeah,
but it would also be cool to go back like same time of year, Columbus Day weekend, just try and like get everything lined up like the way it was.
Can you hunt there that time of year? Is the season open for bow there?
I don't know.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Then you can actually turn it into a hunting trip too.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Not sure. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, we could look into that.
Yeah.
Cool, dude. So we could end that right now, and come back with more updates. We could talk a little bit of hunting. I feel like we should end that one right there, right now, and then we can debrief. If we want to talk about hunting a little bit, we can. But
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, why don't we end that one? That was an awesome story. Hopefully, there's going to be more to it, and go back and do an investigation at some point this year, and bring a part 2 to this at some point. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
So that's cool. Thanks for sharing that story. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to tell it. I've been telling a lot, I'm just trying to explain it to everybody, and just happy I'm getting like a broader audience kind of like to share the story.
Yeah, and now you can just say, dude, just go to that link.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen to it here. You're probably getting sick of telling.
I will do that.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.